I just ate some trash food and I, for some reason, still have the energy to film something.
What's that playing on the radio? Why do I start swaying to?
Hello, I'm Jacob with Those Magic Changes, and I'm still acting like I know what I'm doing. My collar is sticking out of my favorite sweater. We're just gonna tuck that back in. So I'm not dead to anyone who was remotely interested in the content that I make.
No.
Filming is not one of the hobbies that I nurture. Unfortunately, I do enjoy a lot of things and I find myself just lost in doing those things and I don't necessarily think about sitting down to film them. I actually do enjoy sitting down and talking to the camera about my process and what my plans are. It's just getting the energy to actually focus on what it is I'm actually talking about and the project that I've chosen to film, and thinking about like cutaways and stuff to put in the editing process, which editing is not my favorite thing to do, but having those jokes in there does help. That being said, I don't really have a lot of time to do this particular project, so I'm probably not gonna do the cutaways that I do in the other videos that I've made.
So you're a liar!
At the time of filming this, it is December and my family celebrates Christmas. I say that like, you know, people don't know what Christmas is in America. I do see a lot of people with more expansive collections than mine, or even people who just have like a few more dolls than I do, dressing their dolls for seasonal occasions, and I just don't have enough clothes to do that.
Fashion can be acquired by having fashion.
Because I am making everything, those things do take time, and so if I want to dress my dolls in something more festive, then I have to sit down and plan that all out myself. And sometimes I do get a little bit of FOMO when so many people are posting pictures and making videos of all the pretty clothes that they are putting on their dolls, and I just don't have that stuff because I can't really crank out these outfits as fast as these people are cranking out these videos. I'm very slowly trying to build the wardrobe for my personal collection, and I am enjoying just like taking my time because I feel like with each outfit I make, it's meaningful and I've actually taken the time to think about design and colors and trims and stuff like that.
Jewelry, belts, hats, all kinds of accessories.
And I think because of that, I haven't made anything that I don't like yet. One project that I knew immediately that I wanted to do, and it didn't take much thought at all, was making Josefina's Christmas dress. I find this dress interesting because it feels very autumnal to me, which is my favorite aesthetic that I like to live in, but it's still a Christmas dress, which is not necessarily something we associate with autumnal colors. And I really wanted to try and recreate, not necessarily the dress itself, but more so the feelings that it gives me. Does that make any sense?
No.
I'm making Josefina's Christmas dress, but using the autumnal materials that I found. So Josefina's Christmas dress is in the Josefina pattern, so I don't have to worry about that. And I do have some material that I don't necessarily think is similar in design to the fabric that her original Christmas dress is made out of, but gives me the same autumnal feeling. I got 2 fat quarters of this printed cotton. I don't know what this design is. I don't know if it's leaves or seeds, but it kind of looks like popcorn kernels from far away, or like a pile of leaves. That's kind of what I was drawn to. I really like these colors in there. And I thought the print was a really good scale for Josefina. And then I'm probably gonna line this with something else. I have some bed sheets that I don't know why I have these like microfiber bed sheets. I think I must have bought them years ago for like mock-ups or something, but I'm gonna use those to line this probably. Not that the lining is required, the instructions don't say to line it, but I'm really trying to get rid of these cheap fabrics that I have, so I'm just gonna line the dress with that. I also need a black ribbon, and I'm gonna need 3 or 4 buttons. I'm gonna do a button closure in the back like I usually do. I don't know if I'm making the veil or not because I don't have a tiny comb to attach it to. Maybe I can figure something out, but also I don't have any black lace that I think would work because I tried to find something that was similar or something just appropriate to use for the veil that's similar to hers, but I really couldn't find anything at any of my craft places or fabric places. I saw some black laces that either were too thick or they just looked ugly and I didn't like them.
I wish you would go away and die!
So if I didn't find anything then while I was getting this fabric, I don't think I'm gonna find anything in the next couple of days. So I think we're just gonna do the dress on its own. Looking at the colors on Josefina, I think this is gonna look really nice with her skin tone. Julie's in the background there. I haven't made anything for her yet. We'll make something for her one day.
Sure, Jan.
I also realized that Josefina is gonna need different shoes for this outfit and maybe some tights. Does she wear tights in the original outfit? I should do research when I'm gonna make something. Okay, one step at a time, we're going to cut out pattern pieces. Okay, so I have all of the main fabric. Wait, hold on. Okay, I figured out how to do the wide screen on my phone. So I have all of the pieces cut out from the main fabric. I have mentioned this before. I really love the print on this fabric. Okay, so I have the front skirt piece and I have 2 back pieces for the skirt. And then there are these sleeve pieces. It's a top sleeve and then a lower part of the sleeve. I've never done this before on any human-sized garment or even doll size, so that's going to be interesting. And then also these 2 pieces, it's 2 back pieces, and I guess this is how it's supposed to come together, these 2, and then it completes the armhole there. Never done that before either. And then I have the front piece, and the darts are marked, the tiny little darts. I don't know why the American Girls need darts. They don't have anything because they're not blessed in that area.
Because you're really flat-chested.
Now this is how much I have left of that fat quarter. I did end up using the first fat quarter and a little bit of this second one here. I was hoping I would have had enough to line this dress with the same fabric. I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think I have enough here to cut out all of those pieces again, especially with these lower sleeve pieces being cut on the bias. I don't know if cutting it on the bias is crucial to the construction of the dress or if it's just for aesthetics. This print doesn't really look that different on the bias or otherwise, so I'm not sure if that's really going to affect anything, but that's how it was instructed me to do it, so that's how I did it. So I'm gonna save this to work on something else, maybe a bag.
Belts, hats, all kinds of accessories.
We're gonna put that to the side. What I'm gonna do instead is cut out the lining pieces in this gray.
Now, if you like grays, that's fine.
Okay, here is what I have left from the first fat quarter. These are just all the little scraps from those pieces, and I am going to cut out the neck ruffle using these. I haven't cut out the neck ruffle yet, so I am going to utilize these scraps as much as I can because there are some decent sized pieces here to cut out some bias strips, and I'm just gonna make them this width, sew them all together to make a strip, and then that will be the ruffle. I don't mind piecing things together. I actually like the challenge of figuring that stuff out, and especially if you're working with limited fabric or you are thrifting and you only have that amount of fabric that they have, then you have to be careful about how you're cutting your pieces. I'm really trying my best to economize. I don't know if that's a real word. Maybe I made that up. I'm trying my best to utilize what I have here.
Throw it away in the outside garbage.
I have enough of this last fat quarter to cut out the ruffle in one full piece instead of just piecing together, but I just don't feel like doing that. I feel like I can use what I have here to make the ruffle. And I know that I sometimes make things harder on myself when I choose to do things like that, but I like the challenge of having to figure out what to do when I don't have enough fabric, even when I do have enough fabric. But I also just don't want to waste what I have here because I feel like if it can be used, you might as well use it. Speaking of using things that I already have, I could have sworn I would have bet money on it and I would have lost $2 because that's all I have.
I need to borrow $22.
That I had some 1/8 inch wide black ribbon, and I don't know if I just can't find it or I just don't have it, but I found this. It is a 1/8 inch wide ribbon, but it's like this sheer blue ribbon. I don't know if I was mistaking this for the black ribbon. And then I have this. This came with a bunch of other colors that I got from an online sale. It's not the best quality ribbon. I don't like it. It's cheap. I use it for like crafts and wrapping, not necessarily for like garments. I'll use it if I have to, but I think it's 3/8 of an inch wide, not the size that I was looking for. And I don't know if I want to use this because I don't know if these colors go together. Tomorrow on my walk, maybe I'll hop over to Joann's and see if they have something that I'm looking for of a similar size to this. But if not, I'll see if one of these could work when the dress is finished. Okay, I'm back after doing a bit of flatlining for the main pieces of the fabric and the lining pieces. I just want to say this is the amount of scraps that I have left after doing that piecing together, which is a lot less than what I had before, which I'm really happy about. Okay, I want to talk about these pieces a bit. So these are the back pieces. I did do some stay stitching to mark where they're going to overlap for the closure. And then this little piece right here, where these two pieces come together to make the full back piece and create the slope of the arm, was giving me so much trouble. So you're supposed to lay these two pieces right sides together and then stitch them down. But I tried doing that. I did it 2 or 3 times on one of these pieces, and I wasn't getting that smooth curve. I was getting so much overlap from one piece or the other, either up here, I was getting overlap down here, and I was trying to mark out the seams carefully, but I just wasn't getting it to lay nicely. And I was thinking, are these the wrong pieces? No, I found the pattern again. These are cut to the right size, and I just ended up marking the seam line on the main piece, and then I marked the seam line on the smaller piece. I turned the seam allowance back on the smaller piece, lined up the edge with the seam line on the main piece, and just top stitched it down, and that gave me the smooth curve that I wanted. So that's not how you're supposed to do it in the instructions, but it's what worked for me. I think if I make this again in the future, I'm going to try to mark out those seam lines again, maybe baste it by hand and then stitch it down, and we'll see if that yields better results. But for now, this is what works for me. I don't mind the bit of top stitching there. This is the front bodice part. Now these are overlocked just on the shoulder and the side seams. The arm side and the neckline is going to be serged when I attach the sleeves and the collar. I did do the small little darts as well as the darts in the lining piece, and it creates that little bit of shaping. And then the collar piece. Now the collar piece I've already done differently than the instructions say as well. So I'm straying a little bit from the instructions, but that's because like this is what works for me. I was able to piece together the collar piece like I wanted to do. There's about like 4 sections here. And the way that they want you to do the collar in the instructions is they wanted you to start with the strip flat and then turn back one edge, turn it again to make a narrow hem, and then the other unfolded edge gets stitched to the neckline. Now, because this print is only printed on one side of the fabric, if I were to do it like that, you would see the plain side of the material. I don't want that. So I did do the math, and the ruffle would be the same width if I just folded it in half.
This is informative and all, but I think I'd rather be covered in bees.
So I did check the finished measurements of the way that they want you to do the instructions, and the finished measurements, if I just stitched down this edge to the neckline, yeah, the ruffle is going to be the same width. So that solves the problem. I have the print on both sides, and that way I don't have to make a separate lining piece either. So if that's a concern for you, if you're making this, that's how I'm doing it. And then these sleeves. So these sleeves, they came together very nicely, actually. So I don't have to stray away from the instructions of this at all. So just these 2 bottom pieces and these sleeve pieces are gathered into this little bottom piece, and my gathering looks pretty even. I'm always worried that I'm not going to get it to be even on both sides, but this looks just fine. And then the top is going to get gathered between the marks. I do have marks there. I don't think you can see them. That are going to get gathered into the arm side. I could top stitch the seam allowance, which has been overlocked, down to keep it from flipping over, but I think I don't want this edge here to be too bulky, so I think I'll just press it and maybe hand tack it in the center. Maybe we'll see how I feel. And then after I assemble the sleeves and the bodice pieces together, then they get stitched onto the skirt piece, and the skirt is gathered a little bit in sections at the back. Before we do that, I did have to piece the center as well. For the lining, I was able to get the full piece in the front, which I wouldn't mind if there was a piece there, but I was just able to get that one piece as the pattern was. Okay, so we're gonna go off screen and then we're going to stitch and overlock some of these edges, and then we'll come back when I think I have to do the button closure, and I'll pick some buttons to see which ones I like.
Huh, no, you won't.
Okay, I'm back, and I just want to say I am really proud of the work that I did with this bodice. I serged all the edges, it all looked clean. I did a really nice ruffle, the gathers look even. On this neckline, I will say, I have to show you. I did start serging the edge of the neckline and my needle broke on my serger. I got over this really thick part with the seam there at the shoulder and this other seam here where I pieced it together, and the needle just, one of the needles on the serger just broke. So I zigzag stitched the rest of it on the sewing machine, and the sewing machine did really well. Like, the fabric goes through like butter on this machine. Love my machine. And I'll have to get a new needle for my serger. That's coming in the next couple of days. Other than that, I thought I was doing fine, and I wanted to do a test fitting on Josefina right there, and it doesn't fit. The bodice doesn't fit. It's too tight. I can get her arm through the sleeve, but there is no give in the sleeve whatsoever. It's too tight around the arm that she can't move her arm up and down, and I can barely get both arms through the sleeves, and when I do, it does not close in the back. They meet at the center. These two back edges, they will meet at the center if I really try, but there is about like 5/8 of an inch overlap here between the two pieces that's supposed to be there, and it just doesn't make it. I have the pattern, and I rechecked. I looked at my digital download for the Pleasant Company patterns, and I held up my pattern to the screen. I could have sworn that the scale was correct. I measured with my ruler a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around the piece, and it was a 1/4 inch all the way around slightly, because I did bump up the scale, just one little tick to the left to bump up the scale on the screen, and I measured around again, and the difference in the scale when I measure it is so subtle. But holding up the pattern piece itself to the new scale on the screen, it's a huge difference when I did that. I have to show you this. Okay, so I want to show you. I have the pattern pulled up here on the screen, and this is the original pattern that I cut out. So the difference between these two pieces in their scale is just one click. So I measured all the way around this when I had it up on the screen, and it was a 1/4 inch all the way around, and then I bumped up the scale just one click over, and then I held it up to the screen, and look at this. That's a really big difference, and it could make the difference of getting the dress on Josefina, or if I really have to like squeeze her in there, and I don't have to do that and put stress on the seams. So here's my grid ruler. Now, I put the 1/4 inch right there at the edge of the seam line on the pattern piece. And when I do that, it is just on the see, the edge of my ruler is just on the inside of that black outline. And I don't know if that means that that's the true 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm thinking that it is because the way that I have the pattern piece now is not fitting. So maybe this one is the correct one, this scale that I have it at now. I have the other Pleasant Company patterns that I've cut out, and of the ones that I've made before this one have all fit just fine. This one does not. So I'm going to recut this. I have a little bit of that printed fabric left. So the reason why I decided to piece some of these things together was so that I could have fabric left over from that last fat 1/4 that I had, and I'm gonna see if I can redo this pattern, and maybe I have just enough of that fat 1/4 left to recut all of these pieces that I did for the bodice. The skirt, I have the skirt, and maybe I can still use this skirt, but this bodice I for sure cannot use. If I have to, I'll have to seam rip some of this stuff and maybe piece some of it together on the new pattern pieces to get the pattern pieces to fit. But yeah, I am wondering if I want to even recut the lining pieces as well, or do I just want to get the project over with and only cut out one layer? I'm gonna try and see if I can redo everything I did here, like lining pieces and all, and just do the same thing I did, but just with the different scale pattern. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because it was going so well and then it wasn't. But it's okay. Like I've dealt with worse before and it all turned out fine. So yeah, it's gonna set me back, but I really want this to work out because I really love this fabric and I really want to make this dress. Okay, I'm back from that little hiccup we had in the last clip. So what I've done is I did cut out new bodice pieces. I did have a Facebook friend of mine who has more of Josefina's stuff to look at, if they could measure some of her pieces for me. So they did measure the sleeve of her Christmas dress, and they measured from the top of the lower sleeve to the bottom, as well as from the shoulder point to the bottom of the whole sleeve. And the pattern pieces that I had before matched those measurements, but they weren't fitting on my Josefina. So I'm thinking maybe my Josefina is just slightly bigger.
He called us fat!
I know that the dolls do vary in size depending on when yours is from. I just didn't think that I had to do any fit checks with the dolls with the Pleasant Company patterns, but I guess that's just something I have to account for when I continue on with these patterns and depending on what doll I'm making them for. But I just did the bodice first to see if it's a good fit. I think it is. And I did decide to cut out new sleeve pieces as well. These are slightly bigger sleeve pieces though. So I think I am gonna have to hem the sleeve a little bit. I think it might be too long and I want her hands to show through just a little bit out of the sleeve. So I did leave the sleeve unlined so I could hem it if I need to. And because my serger did break a needle, I just zigzag all of my edges or pinked all my edges. So I can't serge right now. That's fine. We'll make do. And then I did take my skirt that I made previously and just draped it and pinned it to the edge of the bodice, and it hits at a good length. I think I'm going to be able to use that skirt so I don't have to make another one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpin this and gather the sleeves into the armholes, put the ruffle on, and then I'm going to gather the skirt. It does gather in the back, so I'm going to gather the back of the skirt into the bodice, and then I'll come back when I have to pick the buttons for the closure. Okay, I am back and I am super happy with how this dress is turning out. I was a little bit worried there for a second, but I was able to cut out all of the bodice pieces out of that extra bit of fabric that I saved, and it fits much, much better on Josefina. So I'm glad that I did make the decision to piece together the ruffle instead of using what I had left of that fat quarter. Speaking of the ruffle, this is different than what the pattern said. So the Josefina Christmas dresses, the ruffle is actually facing downwards. And I do like that, but just to do something different, I wanted to have the ruffle facing upwards because I do like that standing collar effect that it has there. And now these sleeves, I did hem them up to 3/8 of an inch, and that was still too long. They were hanging past Josefina's palms, so I did then hem it up a 1/2 inch, and now it sits comfortably around her wrist, which I like a lot better. Now, the back. The back, I did do those gathers into the back part of the bodice, and even though that this skirt was cut from the previous version of the pattern that was a smaller scale, I was still able to fit it onto this bodice, and the length is just right. So I do have to seam up the back and also clean up these raw edges. So I believe it is a 1/4 inch seam up the back to a stopping point, and then goes into a about 5/8 of an inch overlap in the back. So I'm going to probably bind one edge and then finish off the other edge and just fold that under and then top stitch it down. Okay, now for the ribbon. There's a ribbon that goes here around the waist. Now, I was worried that I was going to have to be stuck using this cheap polyester ribbon that I don't like. It does shed over time. It's why I don't like using it, and I don't normally use it for clothing items. I use it for crafts and wrapping paper and stuff. So I was going to use it just temporarily until I found something better. I found these other ribbons in my supplies that I think would work so much better than the other one. So this is a grosgrain ribbon. It's a 1/4 inch wide, which is the size that I would prefer to use. But I also have this. Now this is a flocked ribbon. I'm not sure how well this is showing up on the camera, but it has that flocking on it. Not really a velvet, but it almost looks like a velvet material. I was thinking, even though this is 3/8 of an inch, it's a bit wider than what I would have wanted. I really want to use this one, I think, because I'm thinking if Josefina, in the context of the story, made this Christmas dress and she poured a lot of hard work and love into making this dress, I think she would also like to use this kind of ribbon. It feels a bit more dressy than the grosgrain ribbon does. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to attach it to the dress. I'm going to make like a belt that hooks in the back, and then I'm going to make a small little bow to just tack onto the center there. So I'm going to do that. Also pick some buttons for the back closure, and then I think I'm done, and I'm getting really excited. Here she is. It is the morning of December 24th, and I managed to get the Josefina Christmas dress finished. Despite that little hiccup that we had, I was able to fix everything.
I've got skills you've never seen before.
And I'm super happy with the results. Some of my favorite details about the dress is this fabric. As soon as I saw this fabric in the store, I knew I wanted it for Josefina, and I knew I wanted it for the Christmas dress. This collar, when I make this dress again, I will do the turn down collar, but I like the standing ruffle that I did instead for this. And the sleeves, they were too long, so I believe I went from a 1/4 inch hem allowance up to a 1/2 inch, so now the sleeve hits at a nice point. The ribbon detail, I know on the original dress, the ribbons have 2 strands that come down here, but I like the minimalist of this little bow tie that I made. And in the back, it does clip on with a little button and a loop. And this skirt, I don't know if it's just different versions over the years of Josefina's Christmas dress are slightly made differently, but I feel like I've seen other photos of the Christmas dress and the dress flares out a bit more than mine, or maybe it's just the angles that people are taking their pictures, but I feel like mine is a little bit narrower, but that's fine. I still really love it. Okay, the back. The back, I have these button closures. I was able to find 3 of these buttons, but I couldn't find another one, only 3. So I closed my necklines with a button and a loop. So there was just this single orange button that didn't have any other matching ones, so I just used that one to close the neck. Josefina's hair. Okay, you guys know that when you get your Josefina brand new and her factory braid is put in, they chop the end off so that it's even. But if you take the hair out and redo it, you're not going to get that same even end unless you cut the hair again, which I don't want to do. So I'm not happy with this braid as it is. So I usually like having Josefina with the 2 braids. I wanted to try something different for her Christmas dress. So I like Josefina with 1 braid when it's off to the side like this, but then you see the uneven ends of the braid. So I've just been tucking it behind her head for pictures. That's fine, and I'm not gonna let it bother me. So these shoes and these tights. So I did make Josefina some tights. I used the tights that came with my Rebecca when I got her and used that as a pattern. I sewed up these tights really quick. And these shoes, they're actually Rebecca's shoes. I didn't have time to sit down and make a brand new pair of shoes for Josefina. And Rebecca's shoes don't look too dissimilar to the ones that Josefina is depicted wearing her Christmas dress with. So she's just borrowing these for now. Eventually I will make her some new shoes as I practice making shoes, and I am getting better at it. And overall, I think even without the veil, I'm still getting that Josefina Christmas dress feeling that I was looking for. So I will be taking proper pictures of Josefina in this dress, and you'll find those pictures on my Instagram at Those Magic Changes. I'll also be posting another project of mine. That's the project over there. It's not finished. I won't be recording that one, but you will see pictures of the finished product at another time. So until the next project, happy holidays everyone, and Merry Christmas. We'll see you soon.
Those chords remind me of the night that I first fell in love too. Those magic chains.